we just wanted to fool you. There were too many people watching the program in the first half hour, so we decided that we'd toss a few of them off. They were just there straggling anyway, just trying to see if we were doing any Call of Duty sim action there. And now we've cleared the room a little bit, and Congressman Bob Good joins us from Virginia's 5th Congressional District. Congressman, it's good to see you, sir. How are you doing today?
Doing great, great.
So we were just talking live from the border with Ira Melman from the Federation for American Immigration Reform. I know that you and I have spoken frequently at their Feet to the Fire events, and he was mentioning H.R. 2 might come up for a vote today. Is that what you guys were running to vote on when told that it was going to be available, and is that vote coming up?
Bill that ever passed out of the House of Representatives.
So let me ask you, some of the things that may be in it, because one of the things we were talking about was E-Verify, and I know that's a controversial thing, but it's where right now it's a voluntary program, but a database where businesses would have to check through the database, sort of like they have to do with the firearm purchase. But the E-Verify would be at least a tool, I think, to help find all these people that have flooded into the country over the last 2 years, Bob. Do you agree?
Well, E-Verify, in theory, I think is a very good thing. In other words, it's trying to ensure that only those who are legal to work in the country are working in the country, whether they're citizens or they've got obviously legal status to work in the country. So in theory, it's a good thing. However, it's become somewhat controversial, even among conservatives who tend to be united on most of the border issues. There's been some disparity between opinions on that. My friends in Arizona tell me that it's been implemented in that state. It does not work. Have a very compelling case made by my friend Ken Buck in Colorado, who talks about how it has fostered or cultivated a whole undermarket, black market of people buying identities. And so someone buys Joe Thomas's identity, which shows up in the system as Joe is eligible to work in the country. So this person earns money in the name and identity of Joe Thomas, that Social Security that they bought. And then Joe gets a tax bill from the IRS because of the income that Joe didn't really earn, but the IRS wants its share of the taxes for it. So it's really become controversial, frankly, in the impact. And some are concerned about it empowering government with more data and more surveillance, if you will, effectively, information on American citizens. And Thomas Massey makes the great point that no one's ever going to be deported as a result of E-Verify, but some folks may be denied the ability to work, and some would say appropriately because they're not citizens, not here legally, which I certainly do support that aspect of it. So and what was happening, there was going to be a carve out in it where it didn't apply, and I apologize for the buzzing in the background. That's because it's notifying us that votes are coming up. But there was going to be a carve out so that the ag community, the farming community, was not covered in E-Verify, and that made it even more controversial that some were going to be treated different than others. So frankly, that was stricken from the bill.
So what in HR 2 could help us grapple with the idea of this daunting idea of even finding these folks? Because a lot of people are afraid of another. I think we're at we're just past the 9-year anniversary of some amnesty bills that had passed under President Obama, and of course President Reagan was fooled into an amnesty idea that didn't do anything either. So what do we do to find all these multitudes that have come across the border already prior to Title 42 expiring?
Well, this is a bill that's stronger than Goodlatte 1 or Goodlatte 2 that I was not part of, but we had a larger Republican majority and we couldn't get those passed by Republicans. In this case, I think you're going to see today that if not unanimous, near unanimous Republican votes for it, probably no Democrat votes, by the way, but it is a comprehensive border security bill, not a comprehensive immigration bill, but is a comprehensive border security bill, and it is focused on securing the border. So it's got funding, Joe, to complete the border wall. It has more funding for more Border Patrol officers. Now, we haven't really had a funding issue with Border Patrol. It's been an issue of the federal government, the Biden administration, not letting Border Patrol do its job and having them actually become babysitters and processors to allow more people to get
Right.
into the country. But it has more funding for Border Patrol agents, stronger compensation, which is important from a retention standpoint when morale has been low. It also has resources to support local and state law enforcement in border states to support border enforcement security. So it helps Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas support the effort with funding there. And it requires more transparency and accountability from what has been a derelict DHS that has tried to hide from the country what they've been doing or not been doing, I should say, in trying to secure our borders. So it is a strong across the board. Chip Roy, Andy Biggs were really the lead on this, from
Hmm.
being both from border states and the House Freedom Caucus, and they are ones who really drove the policies in it, being both of them on judiciary and oversight committees that had jurisdiction for this.
Well, Congressman Bob Good is on with us. Good.house.gov is his website. Virginia is a border state in the fact that it has a massive migration of folks who don't have work permission in the United States has a massive impact. And I want to come into that in a second. But does this HR2 do anything about the insanity that may ensue at the southern border come midnight tonight when Title 42 expires, Bob?
Well, it would, but let me come back to that in a second. I want to touch on what you just said about Virginia, because you said you were meeting with FAIR,
Hmm.
FAIR, and as you know, Federation for help me with the acronym there.
Federation for American Immigration
Thank you.
Reform.
Thank you. I was just using a resource, and we communicate with them a lot, coordinate them a lot. They've been a great resource to us as we've been trying to be involved in the border policy, as you know. But I was using a resource from them in an education workforce hearing I just came from, talking about flooding the labor market with millions of unskilled, non-English speaking workers from outside the country. But FAIR, the statistics are that there's 400,000 illegal aliens in Virginia right now, over 100,000 of them children in our schools, and it's costing Virginians an average $5,000 per illegal who is here. So it is a Virginia problem, just in terms of the enormity of the problem, taxing our healthcare systems, our education systems, our social services.
Hmm.
In addition to, we've had MS-13 murders in our home district, in the 5th district, as you
Hmm.
know,
Oh, yeah.
and contributing to the crime crisis as well. But Title 42, back to your specific question a moment ago, was one of the remaining Trump tools that wasn't totally rescinded by this administration.
Right.
And now that is ending as of midnight last night, or midnight this morning. And you're seeing what some predict will be a doubling of the 10,000 a day that have been coming across the border in just recent weeks. So, some 300,000 a month. My hope, Joe, as we pass this out of the House today, is that there will be a groundswell, overwhelming public pressure on the Senate, so that the Senate responds like they did with the DC crime bill. When Andrew Clyde, primary author of that, my colleague in the House Freedom Caucus, that was kind of poo-pooed, that, hey, this is just going to happen in the House, dead in the Senate. But then the Senate passed it because of the public pressure to do so. And the president really kind of stuck it to the
Hmm.
House Democrats, because House Democrats voted unanimously against it, and the president ultimately signed it. My hope is we'll have that kind of public pressure on this legislation as well, because this is obviously, arguably, the biggest issue in the country, certainly a much bigger issue than just the DC crime bill.
Well, and if you look at it, you have senators like Sinema, but also representatives like Henry Cuellar, who have already been outspoken about it. Ro Khanna from California has spoken about it as well. So it seems like if the membership in what I call the Club of the Tenacious D's is going to fracture a little bit, the Northeast liberal elite are not going to be able to just run right over these folks who are going to have to go home to their districts and explain why they would vote for such a thing that is I was just talking to Ira. They're in El Paso now, and the streets are just filled with people living in tents, and it's turned into a tent city.
Well, we do need to have larger immigration conversations and debates on what is an America First, merit-based
Hmm.
immigration policy. What do we do with the folks who are here? And my views on that are probably well documented. But and good people can disagree on those policies. Everyone, though, should agree, and it should be nonpartisan, to secure our border. We are the most generous nation in the world from an immigration standpoint, where we allow roughly 1 million legal immigrants to come into our country. And how Democrats can defend, and certainly those more reasonable ones, whether they're border districts or they're just more reasonable, more moderate on the Democrat scale, can be against this. So while I haven't heard indications that we're going to get any Democrat votes today, my hope would be again that public pressure will so build as people are seeing. I don't think the mainstream media is going to be able to hide the flood. They've got, as
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
tens of thousands assembled now, and hopefully there will be public outcry. We can finally force this president and this Democrat majority in the Senate to deal with this.
Well, unfortunately, they're all busy covering the CNN town hall that President Trump did, so I guess they've run out of time for that. Bob Good is on with us, and we make light a little bit, but one of the bigger issues, and we brought it up with Ira as well, we hear an awful lot of yelling and screaming about slavery that happened 150 years ago, but these are folks who don't understand the civics of the United States. Ask anyone who's gone legally through the immigration system; you're taught all the things that are the responsibilities that come along with your rights for being in a country as unique as the United States is in the world, Bob. So by just allowing people in without that plug into the civics of what makes this place different, I think is tantamount to modern day slave ships coming across as well. These buses that I see coming up from Panama, they might as well just be modern day slave ships.
Yet the Biden administration, even them, their DHS estimates the cartels, which control everything comes across the border, is is making about $1 billion a month off trafficking
Man.
humans, the drugs, the sex trafficking, child trafficking, everyone coming in as you're suggesting as indentured servants, and that's for the 5.5 million who are released into the interior of the country. That doesn't count the 1.5 million criminal gotaways. Now, everyone who comes across this border illegally, obviously, their first act on our soil is to break our laws. But untold irreparable harm has been done by this administration.
Mhm.
And again, there
When
needs to be just tremendous public outcry.
Yeah, and this is the administration that supposedly cares. And I
Indeed.
don't know how that manifests. Bob, I want to pivot off of this, and we'll keep our fingers crossed as what happens in the House today. With that, I want to talk about your CRA, your Congressional Review Act, regarding the Biden administration's plan to just start forgiving student loans willy nilly. The costs of what we're seeing at the border is already trillions of dollars, and then more of that. Talk about this CRA that came out of your Education Committee and what that would do if we can get it to the president's desks and signed.
Well, I am the lead sponsor on that. It is our bill. It is a Congressional Review Act, as you said. And what this would do is override. It's congressional action to override. You have to apply with GAO. You have to apply with one of the agencies to confirm that it is
Hmm.
eligible to be overridden by Congress when you have an executive order, executive action taken by the president, regulation, that kind of thing. And so it was eligible. So we have over 100 Republican co-sponsors of it. We expect to get a floor vote on this, hopefully in May, if not in June, hopefully in May. We're pushing for May. And then what's great about a Congressional Review Act, it has to be taken up by the Senate. They cannot ignore it like just a piece of legislation like the border bill or
Oh.
or the Parents' Bill of Rights that we passed. If we pass it out of the House, the Senate has to take it up. And so that would force these centrist
Supposed.
speaking, moderate acting members of the Democrat majority and those up for reelection in West Virginia, Montana, Arizona,
Mhm.
and so forth to defend and vote against this $500 billion student loan transfer scheme or join us in passing it. But the Senate does have to take it up if we pass it out of the House, and we hopefully will. So it's a multi-pronged approach. As you know, in the Limit, Save, Grow bill, the Shrink, Wash, and Grow America bill, the debt limit increase bill, we've got elimination of this in it. But we're fighting to get that bill to be voted on in the Senate. We've got the Supreme Court taking it up, but we can't wait and hope that the court does this. So this is a multi-pronged approach where we're approaching it through the Congressional Review Act as well. And so hopefully we will get it overturned through that process.
Congressman Bob Good is on with us. Bob, you brought up the bill, the deal the debate at the House, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, and yeah, there with the president discussing the debt limit increase, the demagoguery, all seemingly so well coordinated as well. They all seem to all say the same thing. It's really interesting how that happens. But take us into what happened when Kevin McCarthy got back to the House, and what have you been told as to what happened in that meeting? Because the president, curiously, doesn't say a lot about what went on in that meeting. So where
Well,
are we?
he might not remember, but Kevin McCarthy did tell us, since I'm sure he remembers what happened there. There wasn't much progress there, and both sides were sort of hardening their positions. But what I told Speaker McCarthy yesterday, along with the entire Republican conference, was, hey, this is what winning looks like. This is what winning sounds like. We have the high ground. We have the strong position. Do not give it up. Our position is we spent 90 days negotiating a debt limit increase while the Senate and the White House were MIA. Most of us on the Republican side do not want to increase the debt limit at all, but we agreed to a modest by DC standards of 1.5 trillion when the president was asking for 4 trillion. We agreed to that on the conditions that I won't recount here because we've done it on
Oh
air.
yeah.
You know what the contents are, but these are very reasonable caps on spending, very reasonable and responsible cuts to spending, and pushes on a path to fiscal responsibility. Democrats can't defend being against these. And that's why they're demagoguing, smearing, and fearing, if you will, trying to scare veterans and seniors and so forth. So we've told Speaker McCarthy, stand strong, hold your ground. He is saying that's what he's going to do, and the Democrats will cave. And I'll give you just a financial reason for that on the Democrat side. As you know, with going back to the pre-COVID spending, that's going to cut discretionary spending by about 130 billion with a B
Hmm.
dollars. We are deficit spending $100 billion a month right now.
Oh my
So we
gosh.
got we
Yeah.
got 400 billion a month coming in. We're spending 500 billion. If the Dems, the Senate, and the White House don't come together with us and raise the debt ceiling, it will force spending cuts of $100 billion a month in discretionary spending. The Dems are going to fold like a house of cards if we hold our ground because they cannot abide by that $100 billion a month in spending. There will be no default. There's more than enough revenue coming in to pay our obligations to service the debt, unless Janet Yellen just recklessly, intentionally cause the default. That the only way that will happen, and that's not going to happen. So the Dems are going to cave if we hold our ground.
Did she ever answer your letter regarding what her plan was, Bob?
Formally, we got a response, yes, but she would give us no answers on when we would reach the or exceed exhaust extraordinary measures. What her plan was to ensure that we would not have a default, and how she would prioritize payment. She didn't want to answer that because they don't want to give up the fear of the narrative of some
Right.
catastrophe, which is not going to happen.
Right. So yeah, one of them admitting that no, we've got a plan, that kind of ruins the whole brinksmanship. Congressman Bob Good, I hope you have a good next couple of days and the votes go well. And thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Joe. Thank you again.
And thank you now. And that little break in the middle, maybe we should make that a feature of the program. Just a little break in the middle, let you go get a beverage and enjoy. But thank you for jumping back in with us. And we appreciate you being on the receiving end of all of this each and every afternoon. And thank you for tuning in today. We will be back tomorrow with more of this. Until that time, so long, and thanks for all the fish again.